Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Community Services and Land Use Committee. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to say Happy New Year to everyone. I'd like to confirm that we've had public notification of the meeting, been published, posted, and distributed in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act.
Yes, ma'am, we have.
Okay. Do we need to call roll, or you have all the attendance, and we do have a quorum? Okay, and at this time, before we take a vote on approval of the agenda, I think we have a motion to amend the agenda.
Yes, Madam Chairman, let me just make a motion to approve the agenda, and once that's on the floor, I'll make the amendment if it's okay.
Okay.
No, you have to make the
this
amendment.
You have to make it
first
before.
for the agenda.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to motion that we postpone consideration of agenda items 7 and 8 indefinitely until such time as staff can consult with the Beaufort County Jasper Housing Trust and other parties to the agreement to reach a consensus on the language to be used in the resolution and the agreements.
Okay,
I'll second that. I have the same issue Mr. Glover does.
okay, have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, this passes unanimously, so,
No,
now,
I'll object to that.
I will object as well.
okay, all right, let's take a roll call
Take a
vote.
roll call.
Oh, well, we didn't have, is there any discussion?
Right.
Yeah, good discussion.
Any discussion before we do a roll call vote?
Madam Chairman, I would just say that there is some language that's in here that needs to be sort of clarified. I don't think we're objecting to moving this forward. It just probably would delay it for a week or two. But that's the only consideration. It's not that I don't desire to support this. It's just that some language in here that we just need to fine tune it before we move forward with it. That's all.
Well, may I?
Yes, sir.
I'll just object to the motion language saying that it's postponed indefinitely.
Yeah, I did too, Madam, Mr. Gallen, but the staff attorney said that's the language to use, so that's why I'm using it. Yeah.
I'll just note my objection to that. I don't think we could need to postpone it we can postpone it until next month, but indefinitely sounds like a terribly long time.
Okay, so, we'll do a roll call vote. Unless anyone had some other comments.
So can our attorney weigh in? Does it have to be indefinitely? I presumed it would go to the next community services meeting.
No, it doesn't have to be indefinitely. The thought is that, it may not be ready, there may not be agreement, among all the folks that need to agree by next month. And so the thought was, the idea isn't that it will be deep sixed,
Right.
and never come back. The thought is that we don't want to cut ourselves, not give ourselves enough time to get everybody on the same page with these agreements. That's it.
What's the nature of the objection from whoever it is who's objecting to the language?
Well, I'll speak to that, Mr.
He said
Chairman.
with lots of words.
And the chairman can actually weigh in as well. There's some language in here that's not,
Consistent with,
consistent is the right word, yeah. So that, we wanna make sure that, when we use the same language in one place, it's the same in another area, that's all.
and there's some other, there's other entities that have not been consulted with. How many signees to it? 7?
There are, well, it's one of the resolutions
One of them.
deals with an intergovernmental agreement that involves Beaufort County, Jasper County, and all of the municipalities that are in Beaufort County, including Hardyville that has some parts of Beaufort County, and weigh in on some of the language with regard to, the agreement that the county is looking at entering into.
And what is the, well, what does this agreement? I thought we already had an agreement with you. Is this specific to a particular action that we're considering?
Yes, it is looking at making Beaufort Jasper Housing Trust the fiscal agent for the fund, which it has not heretofore been. Community Works has been the fiscal agent for the fund.
Oh,
So remember, we had
I
this
see.
discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
So that's,
what we're talking
I got
about-
it. So it's taking them out and putting Beaufort Jasper Regional Housing Trust in, is that it?
Yes, sir. This is the.
They're their own
Yes.
fiscal agent, so to speak.
Mhm.
Okay, okay.
So we need a little more time to get it all ironed out.
Yes, sir. Mr. Peskin?
I am troubled by the term indefinitely, so I'm going to propose an amendment to the amendment
Okay,
stating that this will be moved for the meeting to be held by the Community Services and Land Use Committee of March 11th. That now gives us a specified 2-month period of time to allow all the parties to get together and do what they have to do.
Can I have a
that
second?
motion. I'll second it.
all right, second by Mr. Glover. All in favor of that motion?
Well, discussion first, if I
Yep.
may, Madam Chair.
Oh, sure.
I guess it's still unclear for me what specific language that we're objecting to. It doesn't sound like we're clear on who's really objecting or in what specific
Well,
language it
The
is.
other parties have not been consulted, so we don't know.
So
Other
we're,
parties like.
The other entities,
Municipalities and
the
entities.
municipalities in Jasper County.
so how does our postponement have anything to do with the language then?
Because you don't want a deep six by them when it goes to them. It'd be nice to have some type of agreement prior to.
Which I understand and I agree with, but that has nothing to do with our current language, which we're postponing it based on the current language in here. Wouldn't we just postpone it to allow for more time for staff?
Staff to coordinate with their staff.
Yeah, so the postponement is just for more time for staff, not for specific
But
language in here.
there could be substantial changes that we may not be aware of. Not just scribblers changes. Yes,
So one question I brought up was, we do affordable/workforce housing. So if you use the HUD, Housing and Urban Development definition, affordable housing goes from 30% AMI to 120. Ours says it's 60 to 100, and the question in the red line was, is this what council wants? So we need to weigh in on those kinds of things. And then when you look toward the end, there were some other questions, can they really do this? Is this, capable of getting done in the exhibits? There's a lot of questions on this.
Can who do this?
Can the housing trust actually do the things listed in Exhibit A? There was a lot of stuff in there.
yes, sir. Go ahead,
If,
Councilman
if
Dawson.
by chance the March 11th deadline, comes and staff still doesn't have it ready, can we extend that?
I would think.
We'd have to,
We'd
sure.
have to, yes, sir. Mhm.
And, yeah, the answer to that is yes, and we were wondering if the maker of the motion would consider, postponing this until no later than.
No later
March
than?
11th. Community Services
we could do it beforehand,
So that
yes.
We can bring it back next month.
Okay, I will, change my motion to say no later than the March 11th Community Services meeting.
Councilman Glover, are you okay with
Yes,
that?
I can go along with that.
All right, so now it's no later than March 11th.
Mhm.
Any other discussion?
Can we just hear the specific motion again, the wordage with the
The
updated?
specific motion would be, can I have your, I'm altering this to postpone consideration of those 2 agenda items to a time certain of no later than March the 11th of 2024. That would allow them time to meet with all of the parties, make sure that they have an agreement on all the language that is to be put in there, so it can be brought back to council, to the committee for approval, to go to council, to get it approved, so that everybody can be on the same page.
hopefully go smoothly.
And does this just have to do with the removal of community works so that for the next 60 days, work is not being suspended by the Regional Housing Trust Fund?
No,
They're continuing to do their work.
Yeah.
right,
They just don't have an agreement
Agreement, that's all.
Right.
replacing Community Works as the fiscal agent for the
Right.
program. Is that,
Right,
Right.
Yeah.
that's correct.
right.
Okay, any other discussion or comments? All right, so Councilman York was fine with that change. Okay, we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Chairman Passman,
Yes.
Committee Vice Chair Glover,
Yes.
Councilmember Reeds,
Yes.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Cunningham,
Yes.
Councilmember Tavernick,
Yes.
Councilmember Dawson,
Yes.
Vice Chair McKellen.
yes?
Chairman Passman already voted. Committee Chair Howard,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. At this time, now,
Well, now
do we need
that's
to
the
approve the
amendment.
agenda?
Now we have to
To
vote
approve.
on the
that's-
amended motion.
Right, I was gonna
Which-
say that, yeah, now we need to vote on the amended motion to approve the agenda.
Right.
All, without do we need to take a roll call vote? All in
No, we need a
favor?
motion second to approve the agenda as amended,
Okay,
and I will make that motion.
I have a second,
A second.
as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, amended agenda goes forward. Okay, at this time, we have one citizen comment period. I'd like to read our rules of engagement for that. Every member of the public who is recognized to speak shall limit comments to 3 minutes and observe the following protocol. Address the chairman and in speaking, avoid disrespect to council and any personalities. Confine themselves to questions under the jurisdiction of council. Be mindful and respectful of those who are present and others who may be watching on television. And we have one person, is Mr. Robert Semler, and if he'll come forward and state your address. And the subject is, agenda item passive parks.
Madam Chairman, I thought I would be speaking at the end, but I can speak now.
Well, it is an agenda item, passive parks are, so it's
Am I
appropriate.
going to speak before that or after?
You can speak, we would prefer you go ahead and speak unless you want to wait.
No,
Okay. You
It's
might
good
have
to-
somewhere else to be.
It's good to see you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Glover, Mr. Dawson, good to see you too. Happy New Year. The issue on the passive parks, the business plan,
Business use.
what is the question, what is actually happening? Is this a business plan, and what's the difference between that and Friends programs? Are they the same? I'm here representing Friends of Whitehall, and that's one of our big questions. We don't really understand what this business plan is supposed to do. If it doesn't address the Friends program, and it just addresses other business programs, why? The city is managing the Friends program for Friends of Whitehall Park, but there's other parks that the county manages. I think you all know that. There's a lot of, since 2018, when Friends of Whitehall started, we've had over 6,000 supporters. And they're still there. We have our Facebook page, we have our media sites. We still reach out and talk with those people. We had over $1 million donated. That was given towards the purchase of Whitehall. Another 100,000. And we have substantial funds still in the bank. We're willing to purchase another oak tree to replace the one that fell down this past week. But we can't do that because the program that now exists and the rules that are being applied towards us are so onerous that we can't have people signing agreements or saying that they will not do this and they have no recourse if they should be injured because of what we're being forced to sign. So this business plan here doesn't necessarily match what the passive parks is telling us to sign when volunteers go to Whitehall. There's something, it's not connected, and we need to get that connected. We would like to donate that oak tree, we'd like to give some benches, but we're being prohibited from doing that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Summer. All right, at this time, we will have the Assistant County Administrator's report. Mr. Chuck Atkinson, go first.
Thank you and good afternoon. I'm going to introduce Brandy Hussman. She is our Business License Administrator, and she's going to give a brief presentation on what our business license department consists of, what revenues they collect, and some of the enabling legislation under which they operate. So, Brandy?
How are you all?
Well, thank you.
I'm Brandy with the Business License Office. Are you going to do it, sir? Okay. Okay, I'm Brandy with the Beaufort County Business Services Department, and I'm here to let you guys know a little bit about my office and what we do. Maybe. It's not working. So you can go ahead. So this is our team. You can go ahead. I have Carolyn Wilson. She's a lead business license specialist, and she's been with the Business License Office since 2008. I have Michael Costa. He is a business license specialist, and he's been with the county since 2021. And Ashley Peoples is a revenue collector. He's been here since 22. And then myself, I've been with the county since 2019. In our office, we process business license applications and renewals. We collect hospitality and accommodation tax. We collect the admission fee. We verify business licenses for all building permits and work directly with other departments, including zoning, auditor, code enforcement, building codes, and assessors. A little bit about business license is the business license tax is for the privilege of doing business in Beaufort County. Every business or working or in the unincorporated Beaufort County needs a Beaufort County business license. The business license tax is based on gross revenue from the previous calendar year or fiscal year, and deductions apply if a business license is obtained in another municipality. All short-term rentals require a business license, and 2 or more long-term rentals require a license. Our last fiscal year revenue was approximately $3.3 million, doing about 5,000 business licenses. And 330 of those were short-term rental licenses. And a hospitality tax is a 2% tax on all food or beverage sales prepared or modified for immediate consumption. In addition, establishment license for on-premise alcohol consumption are subject to a hospitality tax. Our revenue last year was $3.4 million. The accommodation tax is a local 3% tax for anyone leasing or renting sleeping accommodations for a period of less than 90 days, and our last year's revenue was $2.5 million. The admission fee is a 2.5% fee imposed on the amount charged for the entry into an admission-based place of amusement and entertainment to which an admission tax is imposed by the state. This includes the municipalities and the unincorporated Beaufort, and that's golf courses, movie theaters, bowling alleys. And our revenue was $3.2 million.
Do you want us to ask questions or wait?
You can.
On the admission fee, is that portion go back to the municipalities that they have admission fees, or does it go into?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know the answer to that.
We retain that $2.2 million.
Okay. Forever, okay. 'Cause I know
But municipalities are not allowed to collect that.
just
Only counties.
State law, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. It's good to know.
So South Carolina standardized their business licenses across the state. So what that means is the South Carolina General Assembly passed House Act 176 in September of 2020, and it's implemented January 1, 22. We have a standard due date across the state of April 30th. The license year starts May 1st, and penalties are imposed on May 1st. All licensing bodies must accept the standard business license application that was distributed by the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs Office. And we all must utilize the local business license renewal portal. It's hosted and managed by the Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. It must be available to all businesses across the state, but we must still accept payments in person or by mail. This is a calendar for the next few years. So with the standardization, the Business License Standardization Act established a standard class schedule where businesses are placed into classes using the latest edition of the North American Industry Classification Systems Code based on profitability. The class schedule must be updated every odd year and approved by ordinance. This is what we just did in December. And the NAICS code is reviewed and revised every 5 years to keep the classification system current with changes in the economic activities. This does not require approval by council. And that's all that I have. Do you have any questions?
Any other questions? Yes, sir, go ahead.
How many business, I saw the slide, but it went rather quickly. How many businesses are licensed in the county?
Right now, we have about 5,000.
Any other questions? I had one, roughly, where would you say most of the A-tax money in unincorporated Beaufort County is generated from?
For Byron.
For Powell? Okay.
The rest of them are not permitted, so it takes longer, but that's where the most of them are because they are permitted there.
And how do you track down people who maybe had business license and let them expire and?
So we go through every year. If they haven't renewed, we reach out to them. And if it's been years, we close it, but most of the time they would come back and then we would just go back on them if they haven't been current.
Yes, sir. Oh, I'm gonna let Councilman Cunningham.
The hospitality tax done by the state or the county?
So it's the county.
When a person makes an application for a business license, how do they establish the previous year's gross proceeds?
So the first year, they estimate their revenue for the first year. The second year, we true up their account, meaning we go off their tax returns. And if they've overestimated, we would issue a credit for the next year. If they underestimated, they pay on the difference.
So they produce their tax return
Every business is required to submit a tax return
to get the license.
to renew. Yes, sir.
5,000 tax returns?
It takes us a little while, but we do it.
Just the first page is what you're looking for.
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah,
know.
yeah.
Okay, Councilman Brown.
How do you track down businesses that didn't apply for a business license and are doing business in Beaufort County? How
So we
does that
get
work?
calls sometimes and then code enforcement.
Oh, we have an enforcer?
That's why I stood
Is that
up.
you,
Yes, ma'am.
John?
So the business license staff does not do enforcement. So they'll send out notifications if they hear of a business that's gone in. We hear from the fire department, we hear from the neighboring business, we hear from our code enforcement staff. Private citizens will inform us if a business goes in and we don't know about it. Our first step is to send a code enforcement officer out there and to educate. That is always our first step in enforcement. We inform those who are in noncompliance of what they're in noncompliance of and how they need to fix it. We give them a pretty short amount of time to become compliant. And if they don't, we have enforcement actions under the law that we can take. But for the most part, folks play by the rules, and if for some reason they don't have it and they're notified that they need it, they come get it.
Any other questions?
Just quickly,
Yes,
Ms.
sir.
Madam Chairman, Ms. Hushman, besides Fripp Island, is there any hotels in the unincorporated area of Beaufort County?
Yes, sir.
Where would they are in the city of Beaufort or
No, sir, it would be, we have the ones in Okatee, some in Bluffton.
on the south of the Broad? Okay.
Yes. Bluffton has a few. I don't know all of them, but I can get that information if you would like.
But none on the north of the Broad side? Wow.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't want to lie.
Okay.
I can find out for you.
No, I was curious, that's all.
Well, that was very informative and interesting. We appreciate what y'all do with your staff and you, 4 people. It's a lot of revenue being generated by your office too for use by the county. if there's no further questions, will we can you have Sarah send this out to us?
Yes,
To all of county council?
I will.
I think it's some really good data.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have anything else, Chuck, to report? Is that?
No, ma'am, I'm done.
Okay, now we have Ms. Audra, who's gonna.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. If you recall, back in August of last year, Rebecca Whitburgess was hired as the new Alcohol and Drug Abuse Department. And since then, she has been amazing. So I've asked her to come and present to you just to give an update of the department, what she has done in the 5 months that she's been there, and what her plans are for 2024.
And before she starts, would she rather we wait to the end for questions, or?
Whatever she prefers, so.
Okay.
If that's okay with you, sir, I will share some information with you, and I'll have time for you to answer your question.
Okay.
But first, let me say, thank you for the opportunity to be here, and Happy New Year to all of you. 2023 for the Alcohol and Drug Abuse Department was a very good year in terms of us being able to provide services, comprehensive services to the citizens of Beaufort County. And as the new director, it's a privilege to serve the citizens of Beaufort County and to continue the wonderful work of the previous director, Mr. Steve Donaldson. And I tremendously appreciate the support of our ACA, Audra Ogden. I want to, if it's okay, share with you some highlights. I have a handout for you, if I can approach. Start from here. As you'll see when you have your handout in front of you, we provide services on a comprehensive continuum. These services range from everything from preventing people from starting to use substances, which we know is the safest way not to develop a problem with alcohol and drugs, is to not use them at all. Unfortunately, that doesn't apply to everyone. Some people are prescribed medications or provided with medications by family members. And so then we move into the realm of intervention. For those who experiment with substances, maybe use them socially, and they may or may not have a problem with them, that is considered a diagnosed substance use disorder. But certainly we provide intervention to inform people about some of the consequences that can come if they continue to use substances. And then we continue into treatment. Treatment is for those who have a diagnosed substance use disorder based on the standards that are required to meet diagnostic criteria to have that. And for people who have a mild, moderate, or even a severe substance use disorder, we have different levels of treatment, which encompass outpatient services where people come in for individual counseling and group counseling 1 or 2 times a week. And we also have intensive outpatient services for adults where they come in for up to 9 hours of counseling services per week. And then for those who are embarking on recovery, they're new to recovery, or they've been in long-term recovery from a substance use disorder and they have had a recurrence of symptoms and they're using again. We offer recovery services to either help get them solid into their recovery journey or to help them get back on track with recovery. So that's encompassed in the mission statement that you see at the top of the handout. Some highlights from 2023, our prevention team that's out there trying to help people not use or minimize substance use does a tremendous job. They are recognized not only in this region, but across the state of South Carolina for being a revered and a very busy prevention team with a lot of experience. One thing we did in 2023 is we continued Project Mariposa, which increased outreach for prevention to our Spanish-speaking community members. And it's been extremely well received. We've had prevention educate over 4,000 people on the dangers associated with underage drinking. Fun fact is that of all of the issues that we struggle with drinking and binge drinking and underage drinking and accidents related to drinking are still the number one thing that we struggle with. And that's something that we are going to continue to address. We've had over 60,000 people view our Facebook page on which we present prevention messages and we promote events for the public. I'm proud to say that this year we've provided training for citizens, over 400 citizens, on how to respond to opioid poisoning. Opioid poisoning can happen for a lot of reasons, not just for people who are actively, knowingly using drugs, but also for people who can accidentally ingest opioids and they don't know that that's what they're ingesting, or they are prescribed and they take too much. So we've been able to distribute more than 400 boxes, that's 800 doses of life-saving Narcan nasal spray to get the number of fatalities down so that people have a chance to be revived and given enough time for EMS to respond to be able to save their life. And so now we have citizens walking around, myself included, who carry Narcan everywhere we go, and so that we can be there to save someone experiencing drug poisoning. I hope that in 2024, we will at least double the number of Narcan doses that we get out into the community. Optimistic, but we can do it. We also received a 5-year Drug-Free Communities grant that was awarded to us from the Centers for Disease Control, which will focus on adolescent alcohol use and marijuana use. Marijuana use is not the same as it used to be in the past. It is much more potent, much more accessible, and it is also laced with other chemicals, including fentanyl, which is leading our adolescents to unintentionally overdose and potentially have fatalities. So it's more important than ever that we continue to get the prevention message out there and to help them become aware of the risks associated with substance use. This also includes working with parents and family members as well, and schools, our coalition that we have built to help us with the Drug-Free Communities grant. We also have provided education on vaping to students and parents and school personnel. And we've had students even complete something called the class action curriculum. This was through our Big Brothers and Big Sisters, where they learned laws and consequences of substance use. Moving into the realm of intervention and treatment that I talked about, we've added a medication-assisted treatment coordinator. This is a counselor, a seasoned counselor who helps people gain access to counseling and medication for opioid use disorders. We've embedded a full-time counselor in the Beaufort County Detention Center that provides services, assessment, and education, and referrals to treatment to help them with reentry. We've also served in adult outpatient. We've admitted 165 adults, 119 adolescents into outpatient treatment, 122 into adult intensive outpatient treatment, and now more than 245 into our alcohol driver safety action program, which is our DUI intervention that people have to go through when they have a DUI conviction through the DMV, and then their driving privileges are suspended. And we also have peer support counselors on staff. These are people with lived experience of addiction and recovery who are in long-term recovery, who can help guide people new to recovery and engage them into services and continue to keep them engaged in treatment. We've admitted 135 people to that service. And then to summarize, when you ask people whether our department is meeting their needs, 93% of the people who responded to our survey who have been enrolled in our services this year said that, in fact, we do. 93% is a very high number in terms of a survey satisfaction. So with that summary, be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Councilman Kelly.
I just have two.
Yes, sir.
We have over 400 people in the treatment and admissions area. How many percentage-wise would you say are related to opioid derivatives?
That's a very good question. Because people can come in with diagnosis of multiple substances. So it may be that that they have an opioid use disorder diagnosed, and in addition, they have multiple others. The number one diagnosis we would see the highest would be alcohol use disorder. Probably then followed by cannabis, marijuana use disorder. And then although opioid use disorder is a smaller number, probably the third. And I could get you the exact numbers if you want that.
Well, I don't need them.
But yeah, it's not the highest. However, we do have some high-risk consequences with
Are
that.
those prescription items or street?
Both, sir.
And on the alcohol driver safety, it's 245 admissions in what period of time?
Over the past 12 months, from January 1st of 2023 through December 31st of
And they're
2023.
referred to by the magistrate's court?
Yes, many of them are, sir.
And when that happens, does that allow them to unsuspend their license if they complete the program?
If they successfully complete the program, which involves counseling, group counseling, assessment, and random urine drug screens.
Okay, great, thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, sir, Councilman.
You mentioned vaping, and I saw somewhere, and it probably on the internet, it showed the damage that could be caused from vaping. Is that real? Is in a short period of time, if a youngster is vaping, by the time they get in their 20s, they could have internal damage that's permanent?
Yes, sir, Mr. Glover, it is, vaping is not safe. A lot of people will use vaping as an alternative to smoking cigarettes.
A lot
To-
of youngsters, a lot of students. right?
Yes, and vaping is definitely more popular amongst youth. It is their go-to, more so than cigarettes. It's very popular amongst young people to do that. But in no way is it safe. Yes, it causes physical harm. Yes, it's highly addictive. Yes, it's still easy for them to get vape. And not only do they vape nicotine, but they also can vape cannabis, marijuana, THC, oil.
And it's legal.
Not for adolescents or young people. They're not supposed to sell them to them. And we do have a SINAR program, which is a federal program where we go out into the community and we'll have someone who's not old enough to buy tobacco or nicotine products attempt to buy. And we'll find out if they're in fact selling to them. And if they are, then they have to do some education from us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
I have a
Yes,
comment. I can tell you that your outreach to students, I was at May River High School they had a storyboard walk around, and at least a dozen students did something on opioid, overuse of substances, marijuana, suicide related to that. So it definitely is that was 9th grade classes, so they're definitely understanding that.
Thank you for that.
I had a question about the 4,000 people educated on, you're doing that in the schools or is that also through media?
That encompasses the presentations through the schools, also, going out into community health fairs and events and things of that nature.
And the opioid money that the county has received, I know you could probably talk about that for a long time, but what have you seen the biggest benefit to date with that money?
I think one of the biggest benefits is to be able to decrease the stigma associated with people who use substances. We're constantly wanting to help the community understand that these are our family members, these are our community members, these are people who are discouraged by stigma from, accessing services. They're ashamed to come for help. So that's the biggest barrier that we have. And with the opioid settlement recovery funding is that so many people have become aware of that money and its existence, and that we apply it to all sorts of different strategies, ranging, again, prevention, intervention, and treatment. And one of the most difficult things to do with that is to, for example, have a counselor in a detention center. That's something that very few detention centers are able to do. And it's because of that money that we're able to have a counselor in the detention center. The individuals who are released from incarceration are 40 times more likely to have drug poisoning and fatality than the average citizen. 40 times. They often will re-enter, use a substance, have lost their tolerance to the substance, and have overdose.
Just one final question.
Yes, sir.
On this DUI thing, you have 245 people this year, is the number, and they have pled guilty and have an alternative kind of way to work out their sentencing, so to speak. Are there other programs in the county as well who receive like a live at, I think there's a live at 25 or something. So when these people are diverted to your program, you're not the only program in the county that DUI convictions can be diverted to, is that correct?
I'm not aware of the other programs. There may be, but I'm not aware of the other programs. They would have to be a program that is approved by the South Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles.
Right.
Because ultimately, when a person completes our program, according to their standards, not ours, but their rigorous standards, then we can send notification to the DMV that they have in fact done that. And then they will do the reinstatement of the license.
So you're not aware of any other programs that the court might use to divert people into for
DUI?
DUI, right.
Not for the DMV.
Not for what?
Not for the DMV, for approval by the DMV.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for all the work you've done in a short year, and we look forward to hearing from you again whenever you want to come back to the committee. You know, we're doing great things. So
Thank you. I'd be honored to.
thank you.
Have a good day.
All right. We will move on to the number 9, which is the recommend approval of a resolution to adopt the Passive Parks Department Business Use Policy, Application, and Fee Schedule. This is coming back to committee after a lot of changes. And I think Mr. Atkinson and Ms. Neggett are going to go over those changes with us. What you got in your package is the revision, and I hope we can go over the major changes at this time. And
Yes, ma'am.
please take your time. We have plenty of time.
Thank you very much. So hello again. Stephanie's going to go through what I'm going to call the nuts and bolts of the changes. And what I would like to do is sort of reframe the conversation just a little bit. Currently, we have 17 parks, passive parks. We have 10 more on the way. That does not include any potential parks that are going to be developed on green space properties. So if you think about the scale of where we're going with our passive parks department and the availability to the public, it's pretty vast. And it's growing at a very rapid rate. Our passive parks initiative is only 6 years old, and that's where we are currently. So when you think about use, we currently do not have a policy specific to businesses using the parks. So when we looked at this, if you look at the continuum, it goes from, well, we can say no business entities may use the park. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is anybody can use it for anything they want to use it for. Somewhere in the middle of those is the right answer. So what we have done is we started by putting the needle sort of where we thought was in the middle of that spectrum to govern the use, protect the integrities of the park, and make it where those who want to go out and enjoy it as individuals, they have the opportunity to do that unrestricted. or at least with very little restrictions. So we brought forward, we appreciate all of the comments, the input, the meetings, everything that we've had up to this point, the public comment. We appreciate that. It has been very constructive. And we're confident that what Stephanie's about to present to you addresses most of those concerns. Obviously, anyone who wants unfettered access is not going to be happy with any regulation. And others who don't want any access for anyone other than a private citizen, they're not going to be happy with anything as a compromise. But I just wanted to frame, that's sort of where we are with this. In public comment, and I want to address specific concerns about this business policy as it relates to being a business plan. It's not. It is a business use policy for businesses using the parks. I will say that we appreciate all of our friends groups and we understand the concerns, but this policy has no bearing on memorandums of agreement with friends groups at all. None. Those are two totally separate things. We understand some of the concerns. We're working on those, but this policy has no bearing and no specific impact at all on our friends groups and the agreements that we have with them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie. She's going to go through the changes that we've made, and we hope that they're acceptable.
I'm sorry, weren't you gonna give a small explanation of passive parks for people listening online? You're gonna do that, okay. That will be helpful.
She's doing all the heavy lifting.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm just going to get out of the way.
All right.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. I usually am a little more informal and conversational, but I did have some points that I wanted to make, so I am going to read a statement first, just to, some of it might reiterate what Mr. Atkinson said, but then we'll also have the policy up, and we'll go through, when I'm finished, we'll go through and I can highlight the areas that were changed. So, with that said, good afternoon, Madam Chairwoman and committee members. In December, County Council motioned for the Passive Parks Department Business Use Policy to come back to the Community Services and Land Use Committee for further refinement. County staff and the legal department made revisions to the policy based on Council's comments, which staff feel meet the objectives of Council's comments while still allowing staff management discretion. Since the properties under the Passive Parks Department purview were purchased through the Rolling Critical Lands program, many of them were acquired under terms and conditions that restrict or prohibit business and/or commercial activity on the properties. Therefore, staff discretion for approval of these non-public uses is a necessity to maintain adherence to the legal agreements the county has entered into, as well as the protection of our natural resources and public access. The first major revision was the removal of the word private from the document. It has been removed from the entire document, no longer says private. The inclusion of that word appears to have caused some confusion, whereby some believe this policy was requiring an access fee for the general public. Although public access fees are not uncommon for public agencies to implement, for example, Hunting Island State Park charges $8 per person for access to the beach. This policy is definitively not such a fee. This policy was created to manage non-public use of county's passive park properties. This policy does not restrict public access. It in fact protects public access by carefully managing non-public uses. This policy is also similar in nature to other county laws and policies that manage non-public business and commercial use of public land, including things like lease agreements that we have for county-owned property and structures, 70 and 70-30 agreements we have for business use of active parks, and county code that restricts commercial use of public boat landings. Other revisions to the policy include the addition of additional clarifying language to the applicability section, which also includes the inclusion of educational institutions as eligible entities that may request fee waivers, the reduction of the application submittal and approval deadlines in the application process and payment and cancellation sections, and the addition of a provision for rescheduling a requested use date in the payment and cancellation section in the event of a natural disaster like a hurricane or storm or something that would prevent somebody from using the property on their requested use date. Finally, the fee schedule has been revised to define and accommodate two different types of possible use requests. The first is an hourly use fee of $50 for every 4 hours of use. This fee is consistent with the council-approved Passive Parks Apartment facility rental policy for the reservation and rental of conference rooms. The second is a reoccurring use fee of $200 for every 12 months of use. This annual fee has notification and monthly restriction requirements to ensure staff are able to appropriately manage various competing use requests while also still allowing appropriate public access. As previously stated, staff feel this revised policy accomplishes both the concerns voiced by council and staff's concerns for the careful and appropriate management of non-public use of public conservation land. So I'm happy to go through those sections that I mentioned. In the applicability section, the second paragraph has, in that where it says this includes, I believe it's the second sentence there, this includes those who, that sentence there is in addition to help clarify who this policy actually would apply to. And towards the end of that, of the application process section, we adjusted the dates. So instead of the 30 days, it's at least 10 business days. So that gives staff 2 weeks essentially, but 10 business days. And then the payment and cancellation, we've adjusted, because we adjusted the reduction of the 30 days, we had to adjust the dates for the payment and then the cancellation and refund dates as well. So those went down to 7 and 3 and 2. And then in the second paragraph under payment and cancellation, the last sentence was the addition of the rescheduling through the written notification at no additional cost to be rescheduled. And then the major area under the property use and fee schedule is the change in the two different types of the fee schedules for an hourly basis, which might be just somebody who wants to come once a year. For instance, I've had requests for a group to come from out of town, like the Girl Scouts. They might want to come and use it for a jamboree just once a year, or the Boy Scouts for something just once a year. Versus if somebody wants to do a reoccurring basis on a monthly basis, which is also how we reserve our conference rooms, is on a monthly basis for a reoccurring use, then that would be a completely different fee. So trying to accommodate two potential types of uses without having to specify exactly what those might be, because I would not be able to fully list every possible use somebody might want to do on passive park property. So those are the main adjustments, and I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Councilman Cunningham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you hit the nail on the head, honestly.
Thank you.
I honestly think you could even, if we could scroll up just a little bit back to the funding. Yep, down just a hair where it was doing the fee schedule. Perfect. I'm not even opposed if you wanted to break that down by sizes for the 4 hours, increased by sizes, like you had originally, because that at least gives people the option for the yearly, or you have troops that are 10 kids and troops that are 100 kids. So I do think there's room for that if that was so desired by you guys or the county council as well. But I think this solves the issue that we had at hand. This stops people from coming in and setting up photo booths like you talked about. I think 2 weeks is a relative good time for people to be able to put in a request, and gives your staff enough time to process those. I like the 12-month policy annual fee. A lot of people can build that out by the month for you as well. I'll make the motion to move this forward, Madam Chair.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, now we need discussion.
Before you go into discussion, can I add one more thing I wanted to present? If you'll scroll down to the liability section. Sorry, I wanted to point this out because I think it's very pertinent. I think it's very important. any person or group, not person, group, business, who qualifies and reserves the park has to have insurance, and they have to sign the document that has the proper waivers.
Yep.
There are other groups that we are working with who are questioning some of the liability issues and policies surrounding the county, and I just want to point out that this is exactly the same as what other memorandum of agreements are required. No one in this is exempt from that liability. So I just wanted to point that out for clarity. Thank you.
Whether they're nonprofit or profit, it's.
Either way, the liability and the insurance requirement remains the same, correct?
Okay. Correct. And we're under discussion, and you
Thank
had I think, Councilman.
Yeah, one more question. We still have the policy for events as
Yes.
well, correct? So any
Yes.
large events, that is a total separate policy, different pay scale?
Yes.
Perfect.
So if you could scroll up a little bit from where we are, I'm on page 4. It says recurring, right there, right there, the top sentence. Recurring use of passive park property is defined as use that occurs on a regular basis. Reoccurring use may only be permitted one time per month. Is that restrictive of some of the companies that go there more than once a month? I mean, it says one, so they get
Yes.
12 visits is what they get, one per month.
Yes, but it's not that's on every property. So for instance, we have 17 properties that are currently open to the public. Of those properties, there are a handful that prohibit business use because we have restrictive easements or conservation easements or the sale agreements or whatever on them. We also have 4 properties that are managed by other entities that have their own policy that they apply to. So Oyster Factory Park, Wright Factory Park at the town of Bluffton, they have their own reservation process because we have an agreement with them for them to manage it.
In town of Port Royal.
In the town of Port, yeah. So we do have that. So this applies to, I wrote it down, I think about 8 or 10 properties. So of those, somebody could go to one of those every month. So you could essentially have, you know,
That's not literally what
7
this means
properties
to me.
within every month.
This means they get to go one time a month, so it doesn't say I can go to 4 of the properties once a month. This, if I read this, I would think I can go to 1 property once a month.
Right, you can go to one property once a month, but you can then also go to another property once a
I
month
think
and
that
another
needs to
once
be
a month.
clear in here for
Okay.
businesses that are gonna pay the fee.
Okay,
I'm literal, I take exactly what you write, and I would
Yep.
think that means I can go once a month
So,
to a property, that's it.
that's a really good question. I will follow up. So if I'm a birding group and I want to go to Crystal Lake and I want to go to Widgeon Point, I can do that in the same month.
yes,
Okay,
See, that
yes.
doesn't say that to me.
right, yeah.
So, I have a question.
Yes, and we have another question.
Okay, can I respond to that real quick? Okay, so I want to point out that these fees are not meant to be punitive or meant to in any way deter people from using the parks.
Correct.
Right.
The point of this is there is expense to the county for wear and tear, cleanup, different things that we have to do. And really what we're trying to do is just cover those bases on a very minimal basis. We're not trying to be derogatory with these fees at all. So when you see those fees, they're really low, but that's the purpose behind them. We're not trying to push anyone away from the parks. We're just trying to make sure that it's fair.
Okay.
The language saying that recurring use may be permitted up to one time a month.
Yeah.
What's that mean? Either you come once a month, what does up to mean? Up to one time a month? What does that mean?
I think that language was just, when I sent it through the legal department, that's just what it was. So
Okay,
the point of it is
One time.
a reoccurring is once a month per property. So you
Got it.
can go to Widgeon Point one time
I
per
understand.
month.
Yeah.
Crystal
So
Lake one
if you
time per
want to go
month.
back to that property more than once, and you only have an annual pass, can you come back and pay the $50 for 4 hours?
Good question.
That is a good question, and I would have to, I guess, without having to put every single scenario in this policy, I would say that would have to be up to staff discretion based on scheduling availability of other uses
Okay.
occurring on the property.
Good, I mean, if they wanted to come back, and they can go to these other parks for $200 a year. But if they have a particular interest in this one park and they wanted to come once a week, they could come once for the 200 and then pay $50 for 4 more hours another week.
Only if it's conducive
If it's
for the
available.
property,
It's available, right.
available and
They
isn't
have to
gonna,
schedule it and all those other things, but that would be a way for them to come back to that particular favorite park with a group. But they'd have to pay because the annual pass only lets them in once.
right.
And he just gave you the language, 1 time a month per property. There it is right there.
I think both of you guys, I'm glad you pointed that out and found this, first off. Mr. Khan, I think that's a good point. I think we should put that in there where it says, if availability, they're allowed to. And I'm not opposed to these people that are willing to pay up front to do it at $25 if they are already a yearly holder. If they want to do one park more than once, because we talked to those groups last time, I believe in December, some of them have groups of 5 or 6 people. And they go out on these eco tours. And especially if it's students, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I'm sure they probably use the same 3 or 4 parks over if it's different students every time. If it's, I'm not sure how they structure it, but just to give them that option, I don't know if it's something we want to discuss, that if you're already a member and you, with availability, of course, if it is a different discounted rate for somebody that's already saying they want to use it all the time, they have their licensing, liability, insurance, they're following all our guidelines. I'm not opposed to it being $25 or $30. And then for your next visit, and then 50, then it caps out at 50, just giving the option.
So I'd like to make a couple comments on that. The first is that we have our own passive parks naturalist who has to use these properties to do our own programming. She is going to be doing programming for schools and for the public for free. So needing to balance that, she has her own schedule that is going to be a more frequent occurrence than a business use. And then also, our properties are not the only ones in town. There are 2 national wildlife refuges, there are several state parks, there are DNR properties, there's other state land, there's other private lands that these folks can ask to go on. Audubon owns property on Hilton Head. The Open Land Trust and the Hilton Head Land Trust own property in town, in the county. So there are other places that they can go. There's municipal parks that can also be gone to. So I feel like there is a multitude of places and that one business does not have to utilize one park every week or every day for their business. There should be diversification, in my opinion.
So we have a motion and a second, and we have discussion. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
When this gets public, if this goes forward, sorry, Ron.
No, go ahead.
When this goes forward and it's published before we have a council meeting, what will the people who were here last time that made us send it back come and say this time when they see what this is?
That it's too much money.
What will their objections be? What's that?
It's too much money.
Really?
That'd be their objection.
Their objection is gonna be it's too
Well,
much
that was
money.
the last objection too, which is why we sent it back.
Right.
But you've made an adjustment in the fund, in the
Right.
fees here pretty dramatically, I think.
I think $200 a year for a yearly pass.
No, I said
Definitely.
the adjustments were made, so is that gonna be the only thing that they're gonna object to? Is it still too much money?
I don't want to make that assumption. I'm not sure what they're going to come back with, to be quite honest with you. But I will say this. We all know what these parks are intended for. And when entity, I'm not calling out any one business in per se, but when a business model is based on having unfettered free access to public land, that's kind of a flawed business model in my
I
opinion.
don't think anybody's, Chuck,
I understand.
Going there with that.
So I think some are going to come back and say, if it's not free, it's not going to work for us.
Oh, well.
Oh, well, this is cheap. This is pretty inexpensive.
This is pretty free.
Again, it's not meant to be a deterrent. It's just, we want to make up the cost. But to Stephanie's very valid point, we're trying to control
Yeah, I get it.
this so that the general public remains the primary user, and that's what the intent behind it
We
is.
didn't put these parks together so people could run businesses in them. I get that.
Exactly. Yes,
I'm
sir.
just wondering when this is published and they come back again, what's the objection gonna be? And if it's just a matter of, we still think the fees are too high, okay, we get that, but.
Councilman Glover had a question?
Yes, thank you. And, Stephanie, I do think that what you've done here is really satisfactory to me. But like Mrs. Tabernac said, if we can clean the language up so that the feeling doesn't come in play, but the policy is set, then it leaves little for interpretation. Because the public will call, you know, and it's a feeling, you know, and I think only thing we can do is stand on the policy. So the clearer the language, I think, the better. Now, my reason for asking a question, because Mr. Sumley was, he came before us because he's with the Friends of Whitehall. And I don't know whether we have addressed that issue or that concern that he has, because the Friends of Whitehall has a memorandum of understanding. As they don't have one?
They don't.
Well, let me ask you this. The Friends of Fort Fremont, do they have a memorandum of understanding?
Yes, sir.
So I'm assuming that the Friends should have some memorandum of understanding. So I'm gonna address Fort Fremont. As this policy, with this policy here, how does that affect Fort Fremont, the Friends of Fort Fremont?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not a business.
No. As far as the use.
Not at all.
So when someone wants to use that park, who do they go to? Friends of Fort Fremont, or they come to you?
So they come to staff, and that's why staff is given the direction in this policy to coordinate that use. Because we know who all the players are. We know what the demand is. We know what their schedules are. And what we don't want to do is have everybody there at one time and make the park unusable to the general public. But the memorandum of understanding or agreement, kind of both, with our Friends group, that is a separate use agreement. There's a separate mission. There's a separate purpose for it. And I would prefer not getting down into the details of what everyone is discussing right now about what parts of those agreements people like or what they don't like or what the policy is. We're working on that actively, but that has absolutely nothing to do with this at all.
So what we need to address today is based on your motion, is to recommend to go forward with it. And we had a second, and do we need to amend that the language be changed, or can you just take care of that before it goes to full council?
She has it noted.
Yeah.
Stephanie has it noted, and we will have those corrections made by
All right,
by
one more
council.
thing for discussion.
You're right, this was sent back for two reasons. One was the payment scale, and the other one was clarification, make sure that it was aimed just towards businesses and not public. We've definitely clarified the second one without a doubt. This makes it for the public groups to be able to go, no problem. I do still want to talk about Mr. McKellen's idea a little bit. And Chuck, you opened this up with saying there's two extremes, the far one on the left and the far one on the right. We're trying to meet here in the middle. So would it be possible to add the language that yearly holders are allowed to, once a month, pay the extra $50 if available scheduling allows to use the park a second time?
The same part?
I don't have
The same
objections.
park, at the full 50, meeting in the middle, if they want to use that same specific park. And if not, then you're correct. We have other options that can be used, municipalities, state parks, federal parks, whatever it might be. And at least that gives them an option to use that park a second time for that second fee if scheduling allows.
With the understanding that there is already demand on the park.
Correct.
And as long as it fits into that framework with staff's discretion.
100% agree,
I would have a problem.
because we still have to operate our own programs and the allowance of the rest of the public. I agree.
And that's a good point, because I could see some heavy usage during spring and fall migrations, things like that at some of our parks. So.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We'll have that.
I have no objections to it if we can
All right,
add that
without
language into
objection,
it.
Appreciate
we'll
your support.
recommend this to go forward with the discussed changes to full council. All right, thank you.
Hey, can I ask a question
Yes.
unrelated to this? You say Friends of Whitehall don't have an agreement?
No.
Is that
No,
a separate
sir.
topic to be addressed at some point?
Yes.
We're working on it.
Okay,
It's a, it really, yes, there is.
okay, I got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, number 10 is, anything, I said without objection.
Without objection.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
That was cleaned up very well. Honestly.
You know, we're all
Thank you, I
fans
appreciate
here
that.
of the Passive Park programs.
I know.
And the work that you do so
Thank you.
wonderfully, so thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you.
yeah, I go to the analogy of if they let everybody who wanted to go to Hunting Island on the 4th of July in the park, we wouldn't have Hunting Island anymore. So at some point, you have to have some controls put on it. And that's, I'm glad our parks are that popular too.
Is there
Okay.
any way to get a list of the parks that are eligible for this out to the public? Because like you said, we do have some agreements on that do not allow it.
Yes, I was actually planning on, when I put out a press release, I was gonna put out a little cheat sheet.
That'd be great.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay, number 10 will be Ms. Nega too. It's request for approval of Camp St. Mary's Park conceptual plan. She had a public meeting, when was that, 2 months ago?
November,
November, it was
November
kind of a
9th.
rainy day, but.
Yeah, it wasn't bad.
But you had people come, and, this is part of the result of that, if you wanna go over it.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so in July last year, County Council approved the purchase of Camp St. Mary's through the Rural and Critical Preservation Program, which then authorized funding to move forward with planning and construction for a passive park. In August, I was able to hire Wooden Partners to create the conceptual plan, and we held a public open house on November 9th, which had over 30 participants from the neighborhood providing feedback. It was really great. We had a lot of really good input. It did last the whole 2 hours. People were very excited and definitely had lots of information to provide. The draft plan that we presented to the public was then revised into what you see now. The next step, if this is approved by committee, would be to move forward with civil drawings and permitting for a future construction bid. I did want to point out that in the backup, the engineers who created the plan here did give us a rough construction estimate. I wanted to make sure that what we were planning was within our budget, and it is. This construction estimate is not up for approval. It's not approving any funding. It's just for information. If any funding is approved, we would follow our normal purchasing policies and bring that forward to council for, contract approvals and whatnot, and bids and such.
So, just to clarify, the only thing we would do today would be recommend the conceptual plan, the drawings.
Right, just to recommend recommend approval for the conceptual plan. Unless, of course, you had edits or any modifications you wanted to make, you could also recommend those too.
Okay, do I have a motion and a
I
second?
would like to make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
questions.
Okay.
I'll
let-
second it.
it's been-
Oh, okay.
Okay, did you get the second? Ms. Brock?
Is this,
No, Larry
Well, it
did.
was Larry,
sorry,
Council McClellan. Okay, it's open for discussion. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Brown.
is this going to be a restricted access park? Restricted access?
I'm not sure what you mean by restricted access, but it will have an entry gate that is closed at night,
Oh, really?
just like our other ones, yeah. So Whitehall
So-
Park and Widgeon Point.
So if I'm in the park
Mhm.
and I'm out on the river and a kayak
Mhm.
and I'm crabbing,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And I come back in and the gate's locked and closed, then what?
Well, it depends on how you've gotten in. So if you came in by vehicle and went out on your kayak and came back, then the gate opens. It's an automatic open, but then it closes behind you so that you can leave. You just can't re-enter.
Is
If
it gonna be
you're-
a timed opening and closing?
Yes, ma'am. So the gate is on an automatic automatic timer. So it's like our other parks. So Whitehall and Widgeon Point are the same. They open in the wintertime, it's open at 6 a.m., closes at 7, and then in the summertime, it's open at 7 a.m. and closes at 8. And then if you're inside the park, you can still get out. You just won't be able to come back
So is this
in.
normal for the parks?
Yes, ma'am.
It is normal.
Mhm.
And why are we restricting the access? I don't understand why we're putting the chain fence up or whatever we're doing.
Well, all of our
Blocking it.
parks are closed at night, so that even
All of our parks are
all
like
of our
this?
parks are closed at night. They're only open dawn to
Oh.
dusk. Yeah.
How about the buildings on the site? Are they gonna be removed?
Yes, ma'am.
They are?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. They're not historic?
No, they're not.
Oh, they're not, okay. All right, and, has the county thought about building, little cabins out there to rent?
So we can't do that because it's active and this is owned by rural and critical lands. We can't put active recreation on a rural and critical lands piece of property. So what you're seeing there is a picnic pavilion. I think they're listed there. I can't see it because I'm old. But that's what that is, bathrooms, covered pavilion. The existing buildings are in very poor shape. And there are some that have some age to them, but they are not historic. And the one that would have the most interest as having significance is dilapidated beyond any semblance of repair. It has collapsed in on itself for the most part. And I do want to talk about kayaking.
Yeah.
And please correct me if I'm wrong, but I want to get this out in the public. I want to talk about it a little bit. None of our passive parks are intended to be boat ramps, right? So you have a kayak, you can enjoy the associated waterways, and you can arrive by kayak. But it's not meant to be an en masse boat launch for all things kayaks and canoes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's not, that's not what these are. These are passive parks. And by and large, the kayak and the dock, the kayak portion of the dock is made for people to come visit the park by kayak, potentially as part of a kayak trail in the future. Now, are people gonna come and have kayaks on top of their cars and walk down and put them in the waterway and enjoy that? Sure, but that's not the intended primary use, so that kayak clubs and all this can use that as a primary launch. That's not what these are. And I just want to get that out in the public so that if we need to discuss that, now's the time to do it. Because we have a number of these parks that have kayak launches or kayak access. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Also, can I crab off that dock? Am I allowed to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
It is heavily used now.
Yes, the dock that's there now, it is an existing dock, pier and dock that's out there. It is very heavily used by fishermen and crabbers at the moment.
Oh, really?
Yes, so that's the only open portion of the whole property right now is just that pier and dock, which is governed by our Public Works Department, like all of our other piers and docks.
Other questions? Yes, Councilman Glover.
You know, could Mr. Atkinson speak more about the kayaking, launching? Because Whitehall, if I saw the plans for Whitehall, there's plans for a kayak launching.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yes, there is an easy kayak launch.
Access? Okay.
That's, like, the dock is going to be accessible by kayak, but that's because it's part of the Blue Way. So if you were to put in at Whitehall Boat Landing, you could kayak from Factory Creek Fishing Pier to Whitehall Park, to downtown Beaufort, to Fort Frederick Heritage Preserve, to the Sands, to, so there's these stops along the way so people can stop, get out. If the weather turns bad, they have a safe place they could stay until it passes.
So we could put a
Things like
launching
that.
kayak at St. Mary as well then.
It is gonna have availability for that, but again, it's part of, like Mr. Atkinson said, for people who are on the water to be able to stop in and walk around and see the park, use the restroom, swing on the swing,
So think of it in terms of like a bicycle, right? We have bicycle racks out there for people who show up and they're on a bicycle.
No, I get
They
it.
can park
Yeah.
their bicycle.
Okay.
I guess the point that I'll reiterate is we do not intend for this to be a place where people who do commercial kayak tours to park their big trailer and launch 20 kayaks off of these docks.
Right, I get
That
it.
is not going to be a permitted use.
And while you're there, Stephanie, you mentioned the tree swing.
Yes.
18,000 per.
18,000.
Yeah, it's surprising
What
how
kind of
expensive
swing?
they are.
I've
Oh, no,
been shocked.
so the swings that are in downtown Beaufort, yeah, that's how much they cost.
Huh?
The swings in downtown Beaufort at Waterfront Park, that's how much they cost.
Oh, okay.
Councilman Cunningham.
Did I hear that right?
Yes,
How many are going in?
2.
To
The community had requested swings.
One, I'm in the wrong business, I should be building swings.
Yeah, really?
Good Lord.
Yeah,
Matter
okay.
of fact, I can build y'all a swing. Two,
I didn't see that.
we saw 17 parking spaces.
Yes.
Is that enough?
Yeah, that
Is-
was gonna be my question. is-
For a $2 million property we're budgeting, is 17 enough? I mean, based on the use, it's not really, I'm not really too familiar with this area, to be honest. I don't know how high the use is of it, but I just want to make sure while we're in there, is it
Right.
something we need to look at ahead of time, or?
Well, right now, the use, although the fishing pier is popular, it is popular to a limited population. The community's concern there is the amount of traffic coming down Camp St. Mary's Road. So one of the ways
The same community that wanted it in Royal Critical
To-
to be a
yes.
passive park.
So one of the ways to help manage amount of traffic is the infrastructure that is developed. I'm sure we could probably fit a few more. If you look to the left of number 12, there's probably some additional space we could extend to maybe add a few more. We just balancing, taking out trees versus how many people versus what the community needs are. And something that was very heard by the community in November was passive, low impact. So I'm attempting to balance all of those, but if you feel that we should add some more, I'm happy to add maybe a few more and have 20 parking spaces.
Listen, this isn't my area, it's not my district, I would rather them speak on it, to be honest, but I was just curious.
Would be desirable to have additional potential parking spots
Okay,
so that as the park grows in usage, you have the ability to expand it
okay.
Have it in the
without
design.
having it defined
fair.
as 17, 20, okay?
Okay.
And is this cement or gravel?
The materials are yet to be determined because that comes in the next phase of planning. But it should be some kind of like crushed aggregate,
Perfect.
not loose gravel.
Right, yeah, no, I'm
So,
following.
can we recommend that it go forward without objection? You
I
have
have
another
another
one?
question.
Okay.
Stephanie, when I looked at the AIS, it said there's $1.9 million and change remains in the fund.
Yes, ma'am.
And this and I know this isn't budget, but the projected budget's $1.9 million. And this does not include in number C, demolition of existing buildings. You have enough money to cover demolition? I have no idea what it costs to demolish a building.
Yes.
Other than send kids in there. I know.
Yes, actually, the amount of money that I had allocated to the Whitehall Pier and Dock, the bid for that came in much lower than I thought it was gonna be. So I do have additional funds in the Passive Parks bond funding, the 4502 account, that I can use for civil planning and demolition while maintaining this budget specifically for construction.
Yeah, I was just curious because this one butted right up against the amount.
And
Yep.
those buildings will have to be resurveyed for
Just
asbestos
send a
and
bunch
other.
of kids in.
They're doing that right
You're
now.
doing it now, okay.
Yep.
You're having a
Okay.
successful day today.
Without objection, we will recommend that this go forward with some additional parking spaces. Anyone object? No?
Yep.
Okay, now we're kind of running out of time, so we got some things to come up.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, we've got, this one's gonna be briefed by Amanda Flake. This is recommend approval of a resolution authorizing the interim county administrator to execute the necessary documents to provide funding for the purchase of tax map serial number 10, I'm not gonna read it all, known as Barrel Landing. Okay, Ms. Flake, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair, Madam Chair and committee members. Good to see y'all. Amanda Flake, Natural Resource Planner and Staff Liaison to the Rural and Critical Board. I've got 3 projects in front of you this afternoon. The first one is approval for purchase of Barrel Landing ore. This one is 1.82 acres in the Okatee watershed, and it is basically a donut hole closing up around protected properties that we've already purchased through the Rural and Critical Program. If you all look on the AIS, we purchased, it's completely surrounded. Can you bring up the map? Thank you. is not cooperating, go down to the. That's okay. If you can get down to the project analysis sheet that showed the maps. I just wanted to show you all that. That's fine. But we did purchase, this has been over time of the program, we purchased a couple before we started doing bond referendums, and we purchased 3 pieces in 2010. And this basically just closes that donut hole around this barrel landing property. And so it went through Rural and Critical in May, and then came to y'all in June, and then back to Rural and Critical for purchase in November of '23. So we is back in front of you for purchase. And the acquisition price is fair market value as of July appraisal.
Okay. Do I have a
Item
motion?
11, is that 11?
Yes, you would do.
You make a
Item
motion?
11? No, okay.
Yeah, it's item 11. Do we have a motion in a second so we can discuss?
Yeah, so moved.
Second.
I think Mr. Glover beat.
That's fine.
I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question to General Counsel. Tom, is there any state statutory language that says if we're gonna buy something, we have to use an ordinance to buy it rather than a resolution?
To purchase and sell property, we do it by ordinance.
So what is this then, a resolution?
It's a ruling, so this is a rural and critical property. And so rural and critical properties are subject to an overarching ordinance which created the funds.
Got it.
And authorized the bond. So that's the ordinance. And then what we do is, with regard to those funds for rural and critical purchases, we bring them forward by resolution so that there's a record, paper record.
Okay, so it's an underlying ordinance allowing that to take place, and this is a resolution recommending this purchase?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Any other?
Sorry to interrupt.
No, any other questions or discussion regarding this one? No. All right, without objection, we will recommend to approve purchase of barrel landing ore.
Great, thanks.
Next one.
All right, the next one is just for due diligence. This one is Rostrum Drive, I believe is the next one. This one is a potential to purchase 12 acres of Rostrum Drive. This is adjacent to the Altamaha Heritage Preserve. That is off of Old Bailey Road. It does include a private road for access. If you can look at the map, you can see Altamaha to the right, and this property is to the left. And then in the top left-hand corner of this property, there's another blue dot. That's a potential 8.5 acres that may be another possibility when we look into the due diligence. But currently, this due diligence would be for the 12 acres right next to Altamaha.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? This is just for due diligence, estimated at $10,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Without objection, we will recommend that due diligence be done for Rostrum Road. Okay, next one.
And the last one is another one for due diligence. This is off of Seaside Road. This is coming forward as a conservation easement and fee simple. It would be, 9.36 acres and of a conservation easement on farmland that is next to, if you can bring up that one when you get a chance, Sarah. 9.36 acres for conservation easement on one side of Seaside Road that is farmland next to another piece of farmland called Henry Farms that we do not own, but it's right next to that. And then the fee piece would be across the road for 1.37 acres. This one is adjacent to a cemetery. There are no graves on the property, but it would be a nice buffer for this cemetery, as well as a vista, providing a vista to the water on that side, similar to some other 1 acre acquisitions we've done on St. Helena that have previously been, had development threat. With that fee simple piece, Open Land Trust would do a management agreement to manage and maintain that 1 acre property. This, again, is just for due diligence. In due diligence phase, we may find that maybe the fee simple piece doesn't work out. Who knows? And it may just come back as just the conservation easement piece. But right now, the owner is interested in pursuing both the conservation easement on the one side and the fees piece on the other side.
Do I have a motion, Councilman Glover?
Sure, yes, ma'am, I do.
Okay, do I have a
Okay.
second?
I'll second.
All right, Councilman Cunningham. Any questions?
Where is Seaside Road?
It's on St. Helena.
Oh, it's on St. Helena?
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Kind of parallels Lands End Road on, north of it. I don't know if it parallels, but.
Obtuse, I guess it's.
Any other questions?
It's the racetrack road back in the days.
Racetrack. Oh, wait a minute, you hear more about that during the break. All right, without objection, we will go
So-
forward for,
So we're just passing for
due diligence.
Due
That's
diligence,
all.
yes, ma'am.
just due diligence.
Okay.
We'll hear back from it after that.
Okay.
Okay. Without objection, this will go forward as a recommendation for due diligence. Any other business? Any
Thank you.
other? Right, we are adjourned. Next meeting.